Joining me now, the Republican Senator Lindsey Graham on the Armed Services Committee just returned from the Middle East. I know you were in the Gulf as well as in Saudi Arabia.
Yes.
You just heard the reporting. The president is going to ask for an authorization of force against ISIS. Something, he indicated he might do. People didn't expect it to happen tonight.
Right.
He goes on to say, tonight I call on this Congress to show the world we are united in our mission by passing a resolution to authorize the use of force against ISIL. Will you vote for that?
Absolutely, and I just got back today at 8 o'clock in the morning. I met with a Free Syrian commander in Saudi Arabia, representatives of the Free Syrian government, and our strategy when it comes to Syria is not working. ISIS is stronger than Syria than they've ever been. So I'll vote for an authorization to use force, but please understand, until you neutralize Assad's air power, there's an unholy alliance between the Assad regime and ISIL. The Syrians told us that ISIL sells oil and wheat to Assad, financing the war.
Oh, so they're telling you that's the way he's actually getting what the rest of the world is trying to cut him off from.
So he's getting oil and wheat from ISIS. They're getting money and weapons, and the Free Syrian Army is in the middle of this. And if you train up the Free Syrian Army and you send them back to fight ISIS, Assad will kill them after they're successful. This strategy is going to fail. It's immoral and militarily unsound.
Now, the president wants authorization. You're saying you'd give that to him. You just heard our Nick Payton-Walsh. He's in Yemen. The American embassy is under threat. This is the home of al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, which is, at this moment, seems to be the most powerful, active group, part of al-Qaeda. U.S. embassy is a target. Should the U.S. get militarily involved?
Well, I think we're going to have to confront ISIS with a strategy that will stop them and deal with radical Islam, which is on the march. Let's go back to Syria for a moment. There is no mythical Arab army available to root ISIL out of Syria without some American help. Saudi, Qatar, all of them are ready to go in on the ground if America will support the operation. Not be 100,000, but support it. Turkey is ready to go in on the ground. Without a no-fly zone, everybody you train to go in Syria is eventually going to get killed by Assad. So when the president wrote a letter to the Ayatollah in Iran saying our airstrikes in Syria are not directed against Assad, that's a fatal flaw in the strategy. As to Yemen, the Iranians are backing the Houthis. 4 Arab capitals are substantially controlled by Iran. You got Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen under the influence of Iranian agents. There's going to be a bloodletting between Sunnis and Shias in the Mideast like you haven't seen.
So do you think, okay, when you're giving this, though, are you saying that you think this can be done with a no-fly zone enforced by the United States alone? Or, in Syria. Or are you also saying that U.S. troops will be required? Because the president, again, tonight is going to champion that he has not put more troops in.
This is important. You cannot win against ISIL in Iraq and Syria without a ground component. There is no Iraqi army in Syria. So when we train this Free Syrian Army who's willing to fight, if you don't deal with the threat they have from Assad, they're just not going to fight ISIS. They're exposed to air attacks from Assad. To go in on the ground and win in Syria, you're going to need a regional coalition of Arab armies because it will take years to train up the Syrians. We'll have to be part of that with special forces. If we don't, they'll lose. The worst possible outcome, Aaron, is to take ISIL on and lose.
Now, you have said, you just said, look, you're going to vote for the president's resolution. You were adamant that you were going to vote for that. So he has your vote tonight. You recently, though, said the president's policies are, quote, getting people killed. Obviously, that's a very big statement to say. Who has he gotten killed?
His decision to withdraw from Iraq after the military said you need at least 10,000 to hold the country together, allowed Iraq and al-Qaeda in Iraq to come back. His decision not to follow the sound advice of his entire national security team to create a no-fly zone 4 years ago and train the Free Syrian Army has allowed ISIL to become a power in Iraq and Syria. 200,000 people have been killed in Syria because the place collapsed. And
so you're talking about, those are the lives you're talking about, but you're not talking about American lives.
No, here's what I'm saying to Americans, that the platform in Syria and Iraq provide the greatest opportunity, a terrorist safe haven of monumental proportions, to hit us. To suggest that we can ignore Syria, Iraq, and Yemen and be safe is ridiculous. Half of the people still at Guantanamo Bay come from Yemen. To let them out is crazy.
That is true. And they say, well, part of that is because Yemen, of course, can't provide sanctuary to them and doesn't have a government at this point. You, though, of course, will be watching the State of the Union more closely than many. You're a possible presidential candidate for 2016. You're considering a bid. When are you going to make that choice?
I'm going to look and see if there's a pathway forward for a guy like Lindsey Graham. I'm a conservative, but I believe in immigration reform. I want to clean up the environment, do it in a sound way. So I'm a conservative, but I'll buck orthodoxy. On national security, I think I've been more right and wrong. I wish I could tell the American people we don't have to go back into Iraq or Syria, that we could just come home and these problems would go away. But I can't stress enough that the strategy the president is employing to defeat ISIL is failing. And the more people get killed in the Mideast and the larger the terrorists get and the more capability they have over there, the more likely we are to get here. The only way I know to make America safe is to confront the enemy over there and build up people in the region who will fight. The good news for us, what the terrorists are selling, most people don't want to buy, but we have to help them, give them capacity to fight back. And right now our strategy is failing. People are getting slaughtered in the Mideast, and to suggest it won't come here is very naive.
All right, Senator, thank you very much. Senator Lindsey Graham, as we said, possible candidate for 2016, says he's going to support the president in that vote to authorize force against ISIS.